Yoga Vasishta, Book 1, Chapter 4, Rama's Return from Pilgrimage. Valmiki speaking. Covered with flowers thrown by people by the handful, Rama entered the palace, just like when the beautiful Jayantha, the son of Indra, enters his celestial abode. On his arrival, Rama first bowed reverently before his father, then before Vasishta, before his brothers, his friends, the Brahmins, and the elderly members of the family. Repeatedly embraced as he was by friends, his father, mothers, and Brahmins, the son of Raghu bowed his head down to them with joy. The assembled people, after their familiar conversation with Rama in the palace, strolled about on all sides, highly delighted with his speech that resembled the music of a flute. Thus, 8 days passed in festive mirth after Rama's return, and the elated multitude gave shouts of joy. Thereafter, Raghava continued to dwell happily at home, describing to his friends the different customs and manners of the countries he had visited on all sides. He rose early in the morning and performed his morning worship according to law. Then he visited his father, seated like Indra in his council. He next passed a fourth part of the day in company with Vasishta and other sages, and was greatly edified by their conversations, which were full of instruction. For sport, he also used to go to the forests full of boars and buffaloes, surrounded by a large number of troops, as ordered by his father. Then, after returning home and performing his bath and other rites with his friends, he took his meal with them and passed the night in company with his beloved companions. In these and similar activities, he passed his days with his brothers at his father's house before returning from pilgrimage. O sinless Bharadwaja! With his conduct becoming a prince, Rama passed his days giving delight to the good men that surrounded him, like the moon that gladdens mankind with his soothing ambrosial beams. Chapter 5, Rama's Self-Dejection and its Cause. Valmiki said, Afterward, Rama attained the 15th year of his age, and Satrugna and Lakshman, who followed Rama in age, also attained the same age. Bharata continued to dwell with joy at the house of his maternal grandfather, and King Dasaratha ruled the whole earth as usual. The most wise King Dasaratha consulted his ministers day after day about the marriage of his sons. But as Rama remained at home after his return from pilgrimage, he began to decay day by day like a clear lake in autumn. His blooming face, with its outstretched eyes, assumed a paleness by degrees like that of the withering petals of the white lotus beset by a swarm of bees. He sat silent and motionless, his legs folded in full lotus position in Padmasana. Absorbed in thought, with his palm placed under his cheek and neck. Being emaciated in person and growing thoughtful, sad, and distracted in his mind, he remained speechless like a mute figure in a painting. His family had to repeatedly ask him to perform his daily rites, and when he did, he discharged them with a sad countenance. Seeing the accomplished Rama, the mine of merits in such a plight, all his brothers likewise were reduced to the same condition with him. The king of the earth, seeing all his 3 sons dejected and lean, became anxious, as did all his queens. Dasaratha asked Rama repeatedly in a gentle voice what his anxiety was, and what was the cause of his thoughtfulness, but Rama returned no answer. Then, being taken up in his father's lap, the lotus-eyed Rama replied that he had no anxiety whatever and held his silence. Afterwards, King Dasaratha asked Vasishta, the best of speakers and well informed in all matters, as to why Rama was so sorrowful. Sage Vasishta thought over the matter and said, "There is, O king, a cause for Rama's sadness, but you need not be anxious about it. Wise men never entertain the fluctuations of anger or grief, or a lengthened delight from frivolous causes, just as the great elements of the world do not change their states, unless it were for the sake of some new production." Chapter 6. Vishwamitra arrives at the royal court. Valmiki speaking. The king was thrown into sorrow and suspense at these words of Vasishta, the prince of sages, but kept his silence for some time and waited. Meanwhile, the queens of the palace kept close watch on Rama's movements with anxious carefulness. At this very time, the famous and great sage Vishwamitra came to visit the king of men at Ayodhya. The intelligent and wise sage had his sacrificial rites disturbed by Rakshasa demons, who were deceitfully powerful and giddy with their strength. The sage came to visit the king in order to obtain protection for his sacrifice, because he was unable to complete it in peace by himself. The illustrious Vishwamitra, the gem of austere worship, had come to the city of Ayodhya for the destruction of the Rakshasas. Desirous of seeing the king, Vishwamitra told the guards at the gate to report to the king that Kausika, son of Gadi, had arrived. On hearing these words, the guards were struck with fear in their minds, and ran as they were to the palace of the king. Coming to the royal abode, the doorkeepers informed the chief warder that Vishwamitra, the royal sage, had arrived. The staff-bearer immediately presented himself before the king, who was seated among his princess and chiefs in the courthouse. The staff-bearer reported, Please, your majesty, waiting at the door is a mighty person of majestic appearance, bright as the morning sun, with pendant locks of hair like sunbeams. The brilliance of his body has brightened the place from the topmost flag down to the ground, and made the horses, men, and armory shine with a golden colour. As soon as the warder appeared before the king, and with hurried words announced the arrival of the sage Vishwamitra, the best of kings, surrounded by all the ministers and chiefs, rose at once from his throne of gold. Attended by Vasishta and Vamadeva, and his staff of princes and chiefs by whom he was held in honor and regard, the king immediately walked to where the great sage was waiting, and saw Vishvamitra, the chief of sages, standing at the gate. Vishvamitra's priestly prowess, joined with his military valor, made him appear as if the sun had descended on earth for some reason. He was hoary with old age, rough-skinned by the practice of austerities, and covered down to his shoulders by bright red braids of hair that resembled evening clouds over the mountain of his brow. He was mild-looking and engaging in appearance, but at the same time as brilliant as the orb of the sun. He was neither assuming nor repulsive, but possessed of an ineffable gravity and majesty in his person. He was attractive yet formidable in appearance, clear yet vast in mind, deep and full in knowledge, and shining with inner light. His lifetime had no limit, his mind had no bounds, and age had not impaired his understanding. He held an ascetic's pot in one hand, his only faithful companion in life. The compassion of his mind, added to the sweet complacency of his speech and looks, pleased people as if they were actually served nectar drops or sprinkled with ambrosial dew. His body decorated by the sacred thread and his prominent white eyebrows made him appear as a wonder to the eyes of his beholders. On seeing the sage, the Lord of Earth lowly bowed from a distance, bowing so low that the gems hanging from his crown decorated the ground. In his turn, the sage immediately greeted the Lord of the Earth with sweet and kind words. Like the sun greeting the Lord of the gods, afterwards the assembled Brahmins of the court, headed by Vasishta, honored him with their welcomes. The king said, "O holy sage, we are as highly favored by your unexpected appearance and your glorious sight as a bed of lotuses at the sight of the luminous sun. O sage, I feel unending happiness at your appearance, which knows no bounds. This day we must be placed at the front rank of the fortunate, as we have become the object of your arrival. With these and similar conversations that went on among the princes and sages, they proceeded to the court hall where they took their respective seats. O holy sage, I bid you welcome." The king, awed by seeing the best of sages, Vishvamitra, with his cheerful face and so very prosperous in his asceticism, felt some hesitation to offer the honorary gift reward himself. But the sage accepted the arghya water offered him by the king, and hailed the king as the king walked around the sage, according to the rules of scripture. Thus, honored by the king, he, with a cheerful countenance, asked the Lord of men about the good health of himself and family, and the fullness of his finances. Then, coming in contact with Vasishta, the great sage, saluted him with a smile as he deserved, and asked him about his health and those in his hermitage. After their interview and exchanges of due courtesies had lasted for a while, to the satisfaction of all in the royal assembly, they both took their respective seats. Every one in the court respectfully greeted the sage of exalted prowess. After Vishwamitra was seated, they made various offerings of padya, or water to wash the feet, arghya, and cattle to him. Having honored Vishwamitra in due form, the Lord of Men addressed him in submissive terms with the gladdest mind, his palms pressed open against each other. He said, "Sage, your coming here makes me as grateful as one who obtains nectar, as rainfall after a drought, and as the blind gain sight. Again, it is as delightful to me as a childless man who gets a son by his beloved wife, or as gaining possession of a treasure in a dream. Your arrival is no less pleasing to me than meeting with the object of one's wishes, the arrival of a friend, and the recovery of something that was given for lost. It gives me joy like that derived from the sight of a deceased friend suddenly returning by the way of the sky. It is thus, O holy Brahmin, that I welcome your visit to me. Who is there here who would not be glad to live in heaven? O sage, I feel so happy at your arrival, and this I tell you truly." He continued, "What is your best pleasure? What I may do for you, O scholar, who is the best of the virtuous and the most properly deserving of my services? Formerly you had been famed under the title of royal sage, but since made glorious by dint of your asceticism, you have been promoted to the rank of a Brahmarishi. Therefore, you are truly the object of my worship." The king continued, "I am so glad at your sight that my inner soul is soothed, just like bathing in the Ganges river changes the mind, cheers the mind. Free as you are from fears and desires, from wrath and passions, and from the feelings of pleasure, pain, and disease, it is very wonderful, O holy Brahmin, that you should have need of me for anything. I consider myself as situated at a holy sanctuary, and absolved from all of my sins, or as merged in the lunar sphere, O best of the learned in the truths of the Vedas. I understand your appearance as that of Brahma myself before me, and I confess myself, O sage, to be purified and favored by your arrival. Indeed, I am so gratified at your arrival that I deem myself fortunate in this birth, and that I have not lived in vain but led a truly good life. Indeed, since I saw you here and made my respectful obeisance to you, my heart cannot contain itself, but overflows with joy like the sea at the sight of the moon. Whatever may be the purpose of your visit, O greatest of sages, know it is already granted, for your commands are always to be obeyed by me. You need not hesitate to communicate your request to me, O descendant of Kausika. If you ask, there is nothing I will keep from you. You need not doubt my performance. I solemnly state that I will execute your request to the last item as I take you to the light of a superior divinity." Upon hearing these sweet words from the king, pleasing to the ears and delivered with humility worthy of one knowing himself, the far-famed and meritorious chief of the sages felt highly gratified in himself.